Winter, 1944. The Ardennes forest lay shrouded in a thick fog so dense you could barely see a few steps ahead. The cold wind hissed through the bare branches, blending with the distant rumble of artillery. A group of German soldiers huddled behind an old stone wall, clutching their coats tight, their hands gripping the cold steel of their Kar 98K rifles. They waited, and then it came. Bang, 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 bang. 4 shots rang out in quick succession, so fast it felt like there was no time to breathe. There was no sound of a bolt being worked, no pause between shots. Just a relentless drumbeat of gunfire tearing through the fog. A faint ping echoed. The Germans glanced at each other. To them, it was both a signal of hope the enemy was out of ammo and a deadly trap. Because the moment one of them raised his head from cover, another shot from somewhere else would find its mark and end it all. It was not a Kar 98K. It was not an STG-44. It was the M1 Garand, the rifle General George S. Patton called the greatest battle implement ever devised. And to the Germans, it was a nightmare made of steel and wood. If this is your first time visiting the channel, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more gripping and little-known stories from history. Now, let's dive into the story of the M1 Garand. From the moment it was just a blueprint on a desk, to the day it became the sound that struck fear across the battlefields of World War II. To understand why the M1 Garand struck fear on the battlefield, we have to turn back the clock nearly a decade before the gunfire in the Ardennes rang out. In the 1930s, the U.S. Army still relied on the Springfield M1903, a bolt-action rifle loaded 1 round at a time, just like most of the armies in the world were using. It was accurate and durable, but its rate of fire was another story. On paper, a skilled marksman could fire 15 rounds per minute. In combat with dust, mud, sweat, and bullets flying all around, that number was often cut in half. At the time, the idea of a semi-automatic rifle for standard infantry sounded like something out of science fiction. But at the Springfield Armory, a Canadian-born engineer named John Garand was tirelessly pursuing that dream. Garand didn't just want to build a rifle that shot faster. He wanted a design that was simple, easy to maintain, and could be mass-produced by the tens of thousands each month. In 1936, after numerous failed tests and constant refinements, the U.S. military officially adopted the M1 Garand as its standard-issue rifle. For the first time in history, a nation had equipped its entire infantry with a semi-automatic rifle. With its 8-round en-bloc clip, the Garand allowed a rifleman to fire at double, even triple, the speed of the Springfield M1903. Its gas-operated system automatically chambered the next round as soon as the previous one left the barrel. This not only increased firepower, but also changed the way American soldiers fought. When war erupted in Europe and the Pacific, the M1 Garand immediately proved its worth. In the hands of a well-trained soldier, it could turn a weak defensive position into a wall of lead, or carve a path for an overwhelming assault. Their opponents, from Germany and Japan to Italy, still relied mostly on bolt-action rifles. And they would soon learn that the 1-second gap between shots was all the M1 Garand needed to turn the battlefield into a nightmare. When World War II broke out, most armies still believed that single-shot bolt-action rifles were the gold standard for infantry. Germany's Kar 98K, the Soviet Union's Mosin Nagant, Japan's Arisaka, all followed the same familiar rhythm. Fire, work the bolt. Chamber a round, fire again. but in the mud-soaked fields of Normandy and the thick fog of the Ardennes, that rhythm was shattered. The M1 Garand did not fire in slow, deliberate beats. It fired like a drum roll, like heavy rain pounding on a tin roof. 8 shots in quick succession, then a sharp ping as the clip ejected, a reload, and back into the fight. With the Kar 98K, every shot required a bolt pull, costing nearly a second. A second may sound insignificant, but in the middle of a firefight, it was the razor-thin line between life and death. In that moment, an American soldier with a Garand could fire 2 or even 3 more rounds. This advantage was deadly at the individual level. But when an entire American platoon opened fire together, it became a storm of steel. The volume of fire they could produce matched or even exceeded that of a full German company armed with bolt actions. The diary of a German corporal killed at Bastogne left behind a chilling line. We didn't understand how they could fire so fast. The bullets never seemed to end. Their gunfire drowned out even the screams. Put yourself in the boots of a German soldier in the winter of 1944. The wind slaps your face. Snow reaches up to your knees. You lie pressed against a stone wall, Kar 98K in hand, your breath turning into white vapor. Suddenly, in front of you, bang, 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 bang. Not single, spaced shots, but a relentless string, each round separated by a mere heartbeat. You don't dare raise your head, knowing that if you expose yourself for even a fraction of a second, a Garand round will find you. The Garand allowed American soldiers to advance while firing suppressive shots, a tactic that left German troops almost paralyzed. When a Garand team opened up, the enemy was forced to keep their heads down, giving comrades the chance to flank from both sides. The Kar 98K simply couldn't match that rate of fire. No gap to counterattack, no time to regain initiative. The sound of the Garand carried another power: psychological dominance. In battle, that unbroken rhythm convinced enemies they were being overwhelmed in numbers, even when the Americans were equal or fewer in strength. This mental pressure played a key role in breaking German defensive lines. At Normandy in June 1944, American troops poured into Sainte-Mère-Église. The crack of Garands echoed down narrow streets, ricocheting off brick walls, forcing German defenders to abandon one building after another. A surviving German officer recalled, "You couldn't poke your head out. Just a glance, a fraction of a second, and a Garand bullet would find you." By the time of the Battle of the Bulge, with Bastogne encircled, the Garand proved its worth again. Even low on supplies, U.S. troops kept up a dense curtain of fire, sending 8-round bursts toward any suspected movement, stopping German infantry assaults time and again. It wasn't the number of defenders that held the line. It was the relentless rhythm and firepower of the Garand. The Garand also paired seamlessly with other weapons. In an American squad, Garands working alongside bars and M1919 machine guns created a wall of lead that was nearly impossible to breach. At close to medium ranges, where rate of fire determined the outcome, the Garand was the perfect tool to clear enemy positions. Even in the Pacific, the enemy felt its sting. On the black sands of Iwo Jima, Garands combined with grenades and flamethrowers to turn a Japanese bunkers into death traps for the very soldiers who built them. For the Germans, the Garand wasn't just powerful, it broke the unwritten rules of infantry combat. At the time, firefights had a rhythm. One side fired, the other returned fire while the first reloaded. The Garand erased that rhythm. No pauses, No time to relocate. Only constant, suffocating pressure. Some German units tried to counter it by issuing the semi-automatic G-43 rifle, but its limited numbers and reliability problems meant it never turned the tide. General George S. Patton once said, "The M1 Garand is the greatest battle implement ever devised." For him, it was proof of America's industrial might, ingenuity, and willpower. For the Germans, it was the echo of death, a sound that meant your final moments could now be counted in seconds. Normandy, or June 1944. Early on the morning of June 6th, the frigid waves of the Normandy coast crashed against the landing craft, packed with American soldiers. As the steel ramps dropped, the German MG-42s roared to life, their fire cutting across the sand. Many fell right at the water's edge. But then, amid the screams and the clash of metal, came the distinctive crack of the M1 Garand, fast, relentless, an instant answer to the torrent of enemy fire. The Americans didn't have to load one round at a time. They advanced while firing continuously, aiming at the pillbox slits high above. A veteran of the 1st Infantry Division recalled, "The Garand gave us a chance to survive. When the MG-42 started spitting lead, we fired back immediately. No pauses, no chance for them to stick their heads out again." Battle of the Bulge, Bastogne, December 1944. The temperature dropped below freezing, snow blanketing the Ardennes forest. Bastogne was surrounded, and German forces were tightening the noose. They came in waves, each attack preceded by heavy shelling. In defensive positions, American soldiers crouched behind sandbags and trench walls. But when German silhouettes emerged through the snowy haze, the Garands began their familiar song. 8 rounds fired in quick succession, without a break. The enemy never got close before being forced down or driven back into cover. An American sergeant remembered, "We fired so fast they thought a whole company was here." In reality, it was just a few dozen rifles. But the Garand made it seem like we outnumbered them 3-1. Iwo Jima, February 1945. The black sands stretched at the foot of Mount Suribachi. Japanese soldiers hid deep inside tunnel networks, waiting for their prey to come within range. As the U.S. Marines landed, machine gun and mortar fire rained down from above. But the M1 Garand made the difference. The Marines advanced meter by meter, firing suppressive volleys without pause. The Garand, combined with grenades and flamethrowers, cleared one bunker after another. There was no break between shots, no moment for the enemy to breathe. A private recalled, "In the darkness of those tunnels, when the muzzle flash of a Garand lit up, it was the end for anyone on the other side." 3 battlefields, 3 completely different environments, but the same result. The M1 Garand didn't just let American troops shoot faster and more accurately. It made their enemies feel like they were constantly being hunted. On the beaches, in the snowy forests, or across volcanic sands, the Garand delivered its full power. It turned ordinary soldiers into mobile firepower machines, forcing the enemy to hesitate, fall behind, and ultimately retreat or be cut down. Even a legend is not perfect. And the M1 Garand, though loved by millions of American soldiers, carried with it controversies that have never fully faded. The first is the legendary ping. When the 8-round clip is emptied, the clip latch springs free with a distinct metallic sound. Some believe that German soldiers could hear this and take advantage of the moment when an American rifleman was reloading to attack. A few veterans have recalled dangerous situations like this, but many others dismiss the idea, arguing that on a chaotic battlefield, filled with the roar of gunfire, artillery, and shouting, no one could pick out a single ping amid the storm of noise. Next comes its weight and size. The Garand weighs nearly 4.3 kilograms, much heavier than the Kar 98K. For soldiers marching long distances, climbing hills, or fighting in dense jungle, it was no small burden. On top of that, the gas-operated system could occasionally have problems if not cleaned regularly, especially in muddy or dusty environments. However, when weighing the drawbacks against the advantages, most American soldiers kept the Garand as if it were part of their own body. One veteran put it simply, "It's heavy, but worth carrying." Every time I pulled the trigger, I knew I had a better chance of surviving. After World War II, the Garand continued to serve in the Korean War and even into the early years of the Vietnam War. In many Allied nations, it remained in service into the 1970s. Today, the M1 Garand has become a cultural icon. It appears in countless classic war films such as Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, and in many video games. The ping when the clip ejects is a sound instantly recognized by anyone with a love for military history. For America, the Garand is not just a rifle, it is a symbol of the greatest generation. Young men who left their homes to enter the fiercest battles of the century, carrying a weapon not just to shoot, but to keep themselves and their comrades alive. General George S. Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. And looking back at history, it is hard to find another rifle that so clearly shaped the way Americans fought, while leaving such a lasting legacy. Even today, in veterans' parades, the Garand still appears, polished and dignified, as a reminder that sometimes a weapon is not only steel and wood, it is memory. It is a symbol of a time when the whole world held its breath. And perhaps that is why, more than 80 years later, the sound of that familiar ping still makes many veterans smile or brings tears to their eyes. If today's story has made you feel proud, curious, or simply brought back a piece of history, leave a like so I know you're still with me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss more little-known but unforgettable war stories. Every share you give not only helps the channel grow, but also helps more people hear those sounds, those memories, and those lessons from the past, so that the next generation will understand that freedom never comes easily.